So, do you like my shirt? Nice, clean, white, in Switzerland, speaking about disaster and emergencies in South Asia. Seems like a complete oxymoron. What I'm going to speak about is disasters after getting lessons in aid disbursement from the last speaker. I'm going to start with a brief story of mine, that how I got into humanitarian response and how I pursued it in the future years. The story is, it happened in 2008. India faced one of its biggest floods in one of the poverty pockets known as Bihar, which is in the eastern part of the country. And there was a big dam which actually broke down on the Nepalese border. So Bihar is on the downstream and Nepal is on the upstream. So somehow that dam got a breach, and then almost everything was wiped out on those neighboring, bordering villages. And that disaster was such a huge disaster that till now we do not know how many people have died, because there are a lot of people who are still missing. They've been considered dead now, and there are a lot of people who, like, families have been wiped out, so nobody is there to report how many people have actually died. So I was doing my master's at that time, and then as a student volunteer, I just traveled to Bihar with a team of doctors to help in whatever manner I could. And we got some information that there is this place which is around 50 miles from the roadhead. And then you have to take the boat because everything was flooded. So we reached that village. The people were actually gathered at a higher ground, and there was an old person who was like critically sick, and he was kind of on his deathbed. And his family, he has two sons, and both the sons were married, and they had 4 or 5 children in the family. One of his elder son probably answered that he has never seen such a flood. So I asked, no, what happened to him? He said, no, he has never seen such a flood. So that was the kind of impact that he had, because he was 92 years old, that old man, and in his entire life he hasn't seen such a big flood, and he was like in absolute shock. And that's one of the areas which is often not talked about within disaster response, which is psychosocial care and counseling and other stuff. Then I asked what else. Then he said, no, he's also not eating. So I asked why. So they do not have enough food to eat, and there are kids to be fed. So we are saving on food. So what shocked me was not this man who was actually lying on the deathbed, but the kind of acceptance that you have within a society. This seemed like a pretty normal thing with them, because probably they do not have any other option but to accept this as a fate. And which is very painful as a humanitarian worker. Even if I've seen so many disasters, but even if I come across such a misery, it shakes you from inside. But at the same time, it's painful, but it's also liberating in many senses, because it gives you an insight to look beyond things and to do whatever you can do to help people wherever they are in problem. And now what I'm going to talk about is basically what I'm trying to do in the last 2 or 3 years. When I was asked to give this talk, I just reflected on my work, and this is what came. As a humanitarian worker, this is a perfect career path that I'm taking. It has everything. So I've been responding to multiple disasters across South Asia. I've been interacting with donors. I've been generating a lot of institutional money. I've been writing proposals. I've been doing a lot of heavy lifting on the ground as well, and all those kinds of things which are humanitarian workers should be doing. But there's a lot which is missing here, which is not here. And one of the important thing is that what previous speaker was also talking about, where are the people in this? So there are no people. It's a totally top-down approach that we follow in humanitarian disasters, and it's single-dimensional, and very little and space or scope for analysis. is there. So all those things are missing. And there are multiple disasters that are happening in that part of the world, which is also missing. For example, this is missing. So India is basically as the open defecation capital of the entire world. If you look at the total open defecation across the globe, you will find that around 59, so almost 60% people defecate in the open in India, mainly in rural India. If you look at Africa, Africa is way behind, even sub-Saharan Africa. So this is a disaster that is happening on a daily basis. And it's still not considered as a disaster. It's not a national emergency in India. And what it leads to is, it's about 212,000 children that die of diarrhea every year in India, which is like every few seconds a child dies. Then if you consider the other diseases, other fecally transmitted diseases, that also take their toll on the children. Now, now there is a very interesting study which has just came out that says that compared African kids and the Indian kids, and showed that Indian kids are shorter and they are undernourished because of the open defecation in the country, which is a universal phenomena. And if you look at the figures, about 1/3 of undernourished kids live in India. And even the adults who are undernourished basically run a high risk of obesity and diabetes later in their lives. Now, I'm just showing you a few pictures from some of the disasters which happened last year. This is from floods in Orissa. And what you see in this picture is a man sitting there. There's a village, a remote rural village in Orissa on the east coast, and it's kind of completely flooded. What you don't see here is the misery that is behind this picture. It may seem like a perfectly fine picture, okay picture, but what you don't see here is that people are actually forced to drink the same water, and they're forced to take the bath in the same water because they have no place else to go. So all those things actually enhances the risk. Now in this picture, this is from the Nepal earthquake, very close to the Lamtang National Park, which directly goes to the Mount Everest. What you see here is this is a village which has around 600 households, and around 100% of them are actually collapsed down, and this village has lost their 45 of their own. And what you don't see here is when you speak to this person called Ram Prasad, his resilience, his enthusiasm, and his spirit. That when I asked him, now you've lost like 45 of your own, mostly young and children, what is the way forward for you? He says, we have been surviving here earlier as well. When you were not here, it doesn't matter. We will come out of this. We will bounce back. So his response was like, as if we are not required, and they know what resilience is, and they don't need to be taught what resilience is all about. But everything is not grim about disaster. There are positive stories as well. There are good examples as well, and there are success stories as well. But the basic problem that I've been reflecting on, that how do we actually take humanitarian response, which is very short term, quick fix, rough and dirty, and how do we bring in this analysis of looking into the other risk or the other challenges around the communities, and how do we bring some of the concern, like if suppose we are doing a livelihoods support recovery work, how do we bring in biodiversity concerns within those initiatives? So some of these things, I think what we need to start analyzing and looking into our work is seeing it from a holistic perspective. So if we are talking about risk, we have to look into a multidimensional kind of a risk, because if you are responding to a village in India, it's not just that you go and provide something. There are issues of exclusion. There are caste-based issues. There are issues of poverty. There are issues of environment and other issues. So all those things need to be considered. So because as per the humanitarian imperative as well, there is something called do no harm. So if you're doing something, please do not do any harm. Better you leave that place. Just don't do any interventions, but do not do any harm. So if you are responding in a village where the caste hierarchies are really high, then how do you address those? So as a humanitarian worker, we need to start thinking about those things as well. It's not just one-way traffic that you go and provide and you leave. Then when we are talking about resilience, so it can't be a single-dimensional thing. I mean, you have to ask this question, resilience for what? In what context, resilience? So it could be climate, it could be about violence, poverty, environmental changes, disaster, or it could be a combination of that. In many of the disasters, natural disasters, all these factors actually combine and make it a more complex phenomena to be addressed. So all those things need to be understood. Then when I look at the interventions that we do, I think that the two R's are basically resist and recover, are very inherent to our response, and also to the communities whom we are responding for. I mean, they also carry all this. So all resist and response, so the resist means that the capacity to basically observe, and recover is basically ability to recover from a disaster. And this is what is already there in the communities, but that needs to be understood in detail before actually responding, or before going into the communities with your own preconceived notions. The three key skills that I have found in the communities where I have worked in disasters are common everywhere. I mean, they could be like a variation in the sense, I mean, some of the communities would have like understanding of risk more than the community B, but all these three things are already there. So we need to utilize this. Like, we need to know what is the understanding of the people there in terms of risk, and how do they organize and act? What is the level of social capital within the communities? And what is the capacity within them to learn and change? So I think all the three things are very critical in terms of understanding. Last but not the least, this is basically what I thought about resilience, that it's the power of individual and communities to live with dignity and responding successfully to the disasters and all. So I think it's already there. We need to understand it in a much more detailed manner, and be very careful while designing some of the humanitarian response programs with the communities. Thank you.